It's indeed a pleasure to present my topic called cooperative teaching and learning. In fact, in this 1 hour session, we'll be focusing on the basics of cooperative teaching and learning, and I'll be sharing my experience, like how I used cooperative teaching and learning in my courses, and what are the outcomes, or like what are the implications of the cooperative teaching and learning for the past 6-7 years we've been using that, right? And I thank Department of Mathematics, Rathinam College of Arts and Science, and All India Ideal Teachers Association for the opportunity. So, without a further ado, let's get started. So this is the outline of the presentation, or in a nutshell, the synopsis of the presentation. First, we'll be focusing on the cooperative teaching and learning. What exactly is cooperative teaching and learning? And some may have gone through what is cooperative teaching and learning, and some it's pretty new. So we'll be on same page. So we'll be focusing from the scratch, right? And then we'll be focusing on the case study, and I'll be sharing my experience and how I've used CTL. I have abbreviated CTL, which means cooperative teaching and learning, and reflections on CTLs, like what works and what does not works in CTL, and then examples, like some of you from mathematics background. So I'll be using Kakuro, which is a Japanese puzzle, for using puzzles to teach mathematics for schools as well as for the adults. Like in schools, we'll be teaching with the addition, and also we'll be looking into the arithmetics, whereas in college we'll be using interior programming problem for solving Kakuro. So as simple as that. Right? And for the other streams, like specifically the arts stream or architecture, we'll be looking into the mood board, when which you can use that to effectively use that to gain some advantage over the conventional teaching. So that's the basic idea of this particular lecture is all about, right? Then we'll be looking into the hands-on experience. I'm just telling you upfront, like grab some sheet of papers and pencils and sketch pens if you have, or something. Like we'll be doing an experiment or something, an exercise. Instead of only focusing on theory, if you don't know, or if you don't put your heart and soul into it, or do it at least a few things in the cooperative teaching and learning, you'll not appreciate that. So in order to reinforce the knowledge of cooperative teaching and learning, we have an exercise. So that will be probably around 3:45. We'll be looking into that. Then we'll be looking into the conclusion and future directions, like how do we use that, and we our recommendation for you to use in your regular lectures and something like that, right? All right. So we'll begin with the CTL. What is CTL? Cooperative Teaching and Learning, right? So there'll be introduction to cooperative teaching and learning. Before we actually define what is cooperative teaching and learning, let me tell you a little bit on the teaching methodology which we have adapted till now, or in a regular sense, conventional teaching. I mean, we'll be having a classroom with a list of students, and we'll be delivering our lectures, and it'll be face to face, and it'll be one to many in number, and some may grab the concepts easily, and some they are like in the average position where in which they can get a 50% or 80% of what we say, and some people who consider to be the slow learners who have difficulty in understanding, say people have got dyslexia and learning disability. Those are the people who will be in the last screen. So that's a conventional teaching. So what generally we do is we'll be focusing some additional focus or guidance towards the last two creamy layers, and then we try to boost their morale, and then they perform really well if they follow our advice, or if they practice more or something like that, right? So corporate teaching is a little different when we compare to conventional teaching. From the words of John Dewey, and famous English philosopher, he says that learning should be an active and dynamic process. It is not a static process, it's a dynamic process, which means that it has to adapt to the change. So a monotonous one to many lecture will never be a good way of teaching always. I'm not saying that's entirely wrong, but it does not work all the time, right? So that's what basically there should be a dynamics or something that should be changed in the way of teaching or in the way of learning as well. And then it should be child centric or student centric, so, or something like the main focus of the learning or the objective of a course should be the students, right? How they learn and what they learn matters the most, rather than it's a coverage of syllabus or the curriculum and so on, right? And also, not only that, he just adds another point. It called it should kinder an interest, which is in this case in the cooperative teaching and learning, will be looking into the social interest and activity. So something that should kinder the interest. It not only focus on child centric, but it should kinder the interest of the student. Then if you try to create an atmosphere where a student loves to learn, then you don't have to do extra stuff to make him to learn. So it's as simple as that. So that's what we're going to look into the cooperative teaching and learning. Right? So then we'll define what is cooperative teaching and learning. And cooperative teaching and learning is dividing a classroom into a number of small units. Like you can virtually divide them among three groups or something like that. You remember in schools we have got that clubs or houses like blue house, green house, and so on. During an annual day, there'll be always a competition like which house wins or which teams wins and something like that. So cooperative learning is the same process, when which we'll be dividing the number of students into small chunks, manageable chunks. That's very important thing, because when you have 60 people, you can divide them into two, each with 30, but it'll be more better if you divide them by 3 or 4 or 5. That'll be more easy. And more or less number also does not work, because 2 in a group or 3 in a group does not mix much significance in terms of cooperative learning. So we'll be focusing on the division of people into a number of chunks. Then we will be giving them the problem or giving them the some issues in the society. When they'll come up with an idea, then we will evaluate them, and then by that process they learn that particular concept to a greater extent, right? So in this 1 hour lecture, we'll be focusing of all those things, like how this can apply to mathematics, how this can apply to engineering, and something like that, right? So that's basically a cooperative learning, right? One key skill that is gonna improve after if you practice cooperative learning in your classroom is a group dynamics, right? So generally in our country, we'll be looking into individual credentials in terms of academics. They say who comes first in the class, or who does not really do so, we give them additional assignments or something like that. So it's all about an individual thing, right? So generally even in the kids residing in the neighborhood, they just compare, the parents just compare the kids marks. They say what's the standing in the class or something like that. So it almost becomes an individual, right? So in that case, student grow in that environment will not have a group dynamics. They don't know how to behave with a larger group, right? Now the technology and the world is changing to a bigger level. Like people talk about big data, data mining, which has a huge data, and people have to work in different environment, be it one to one or be it many to many. So they have to adapt to the change. So that changes should happen in the classroom itself. So that's what we're going to focus in this cooperative teaching and learning is all about, right? And then finally, once a group dynamics gets built, then the outcome of CTL is always a social development, right? It kinders the social engagement as well as the social responsibility. We'll be looking at to some of the concepts that has hindered people to do some social activities apart from their academic curriculum or something like that. And then nowadays we look into engineering ethics, and the very famous terminology we now project is the peace engineering. People talk about engineering earlier, then they talk about technology and so on. But now people are coming into engineering ethics and peace engineering, which means that we look into the usage of technology and its associated damages or its associated goodness or something like that. So those things are called peace engineering, and we'll be focusing primarily on that in subsequent lectures. But peace engineering is definitely a new area that you can do. If you are aiming for a PhD in management or something like that, then you can really look into peace engineering. How do you use technology and engineering for a right cause? And if something was not correct, like if there is an over exploitation of an oil in a particular country, because it's an engineering advancement or people uses engineering to do that, you can bring justice to that, or you can even tell people about its ill effects and you can shut down that particular thing and something like that. So those things comes under peace engineering, something like that, right? So all these things are basically a cooperative teaching and learning methodology, right? And one of the important thing that I want to tell you is it is little bit outside the norm of our conventional teaching. And this is our cooperative learning classrooms. We have got the group of students with a single, they share the single table, and then given a problem, they can discuss, or some people can divide themselves into different tasks and then perform that particular operation and finally gives a consensus or solution or something. Right. In fact, even we have tried in one of our institute, like this particular setup, and in fact, it got constructed. And due to permission, I haven't able to put the particular built up, stuff. But we have built this kind of a setup in one of our institution, and this is the cooperative learning classroom, right? So, so far I've defined you what is basically a cooperative teaching and learning. Now we'll focus, these concepts is already there in movies, but we have not realized that. But we'll take a couple of movies and we'll see the concept applied in those movies. And in fact, movies has got a more flavor and something, then you can even relate it to your daily life. So that's it. So this particular movie called Ramana, which was released in 2002, it's a Tamil movie, and in fact this movie gets translated, or in fact dubbed in various other languages, or remake in various other languages. And one of the core idea of this movie is that abolition of corruption in the government sector. So the hero, the protagonist, will eradicate corruption by training his ex-students. Whoever he works in a college actually. So he has his students and he selects few of them who are really good, and they are against corruption, and he trained them and get details about people who does corruption, and then in a sense they kidnap and then they execute the top three people who comes in that list or something like that. So it's an immoral thing, but then the movie goes like that. So in order to eradicate corruption, he has a team of students or something like that. So those kind of thing is called cooperative groups. In fact, you can even write about secret groups. But it's a good or bad. It's not, it's a debatable one, but that's a cooperative group, something like that. But there's another important thing in the society is that, like, there's an imbalance in terms of the learning and teaching itself. In the schools, we probably have got uniformity, but if they go to a real life scenario, they go to a job, especially some job will have got the imbalance, societal imbalance, and some people who have got higher credentials, they are officers, and some people are having a lower credentials or qualifications than they are like middlemen or lower employees or something like that, right? So, but if they have a cooperative learning, embedded in their school itself, then they don't talk about this kind of imbalance. So that is what it is depicted in this movie. So this is the scene in which they will be, the officers are in the process of finding the culprit, or the one actually the protagonist, for murdering. But then, like, there will be a police constable who wanted to involve in the discussion and say, to put forth this idea. But then they will chase him out because he's just a driver and they are officers or something like that. Right. So that's an imbalance. And then followed by, after several months, they could not able to get a clue of who's doing all those things. Then finally, this particular IPS officer will be deputed for this, to expedite the process of finding the culprit or something. But then, like, he also would have no clue of what's going on and something like that, right? At this point, he opened up and he said, like, I have found out who's really the culprit is, something like that. So you can see in this thing, the tone is the same. Just guy put force a finger and chase him away. And even in this case, you can see the IPS officer, who's kind of considered to be the intelligent. He just say, you tell us, like, you tell what's that. So he just involves him in the discussion as well. So that's the difference between this picture and this picture. And finally, he tells all the things that he has discovered about this crime. And finally, the policeman appreciates that. He also acknowledged that you have almost found out the case, or almost the case got solved or something. And you can see the dismay of these people, like they are considered to be the so-called officers. They don't involve him earlier in the discussion. If they would have involved him in the earlier discussion, and the presence of this person not have been felt, and all would have been benefited. In fact, if the case got solved, all of them will be benefited or promoted or something. So that's what basically a cooperative teaching and learning. So if you have different chunks of people involved in your discussion, and you get a lot of idea, you have a better view of the problem and also the solution. So that's basically what we're gonna see in this particular picture or something. And there's another movie. It's also a Tamil movie called Katti, in which a prisoner escapes from the prison or a central prison, and the policemen have no clue. So they invite another criminal, because there's a saying called the diamond cuts diamond. So the prisoner or the culprit knows the criminal knows the other criminal's path or something like that. So they involve him in the discussion, and they could uh, find him or the whereabouts of the person who have escaped from this protagonist, something like that, right? And he does performs the mental simulation of the hostel blocks from the plan. In fact, this movie got released in 2014. That is where like the construction simulation automation have comes into picture, like where the people talked about visualization of buildings, urban landscape, and so on. But this is just a mental, he just thinks from his mind like how he would have escaped. There's a thing, and there's a bunker and something like that. And in a math, if you are a management faculty, then you can even relate this particular thing to an expert opinion or expert judgment and something like that, right? And then finally you just see that he has got into the bunker, and he would have done. Then finally the prisoner who ran away will be caught by the police with the help of this prisoner. So this is actually an involvement of people or experts or somebody who can even contribute to a better solution. So that's all basically is a cooperative teaching and learning, right? So this in a simple sense, even though this is just a movie scene, but this has got huge correlations to our academic teaching and research or teaching and learning. Right, right. So that's basically overview of what is cooperative teaching and learning. And in fact, in the first case, we'll define what is cooperative teaching and learning. Then we talk about some movie scenes when which the implications of cooperative teaching and teaching and learning was portrayed in a greater sense. Now it's our experience, like how we use cooperative teaching and learning in our case. And this are my experience. And so this is a course that I teach in VIT Chennai. It's called CLE 211 Construction Management. It's an elective course, and also considered to be a very important course for civil engineers to manage a building project from the scratch to the completion, which means from the creating a 2D layout till the completion of the project. So this course is all about that, right? And the activity I gave to my student is to create a 2D floor plan, or in a common sense, it's a layout for a single story residential building of 700 square feet with basic amenities for a family of 6 people. Two elderly people like grandfather and grandmother, and two adult father and mother, and two children, two children, right? And this was given in 2015 to a batch of mixed third years and final years. And here it is, right? So first what we're gonna do is we have divided them into equal numbers. In fact, I have divided them into three groups depending upon the strength, and you can divide them into optimum number of units. They call chunks of students, like chunks of units or something like that. So you divide that, and you brief them about this particular task. The task is to create a 2D floor plan for a single story, a single residential building, and with basic amenities and something. What they can do is they'll be given some preparatory time. when which they'll be focusing on the concepts of this particular thing or the nuances probably, and then they look into the building idea for this particular problem. They look into internet, they look into different resources available at that point and something like that. But I'll come back to this picture a little later. But observe that they'll be looking into a lot of things and get involved in a lot of discussion and something like that, right? Once they have done, one of the group members will be representing that in the board, right? So they'll be drawing, there's actually three groups: group one, group two, and group three. So their leaders or the representatives, they draw a floor plan in the board approximately, not in dimension. This is just a conceptual thing. And then they look into a lot of other aspects like the 5 6 people, their comfort, and what are the important things that could be probably considered while creating a floor plan or a construction project or something like that, right? And this girl is from France. She's Gabrielle Delorme, and she did her BTech in VIT Chennai, and she went to University of Liverpool for masters in urban planning, and finally she finished her masters as well and works in the United Kingdom. And this is also one of our students called Mayur Dave. He's from Gujarat, and he then went to University of Adelaide and he did his masters in construction management. And then both of them are in great flying colors, and this is his particular thing, something like that. Right. And then we'll once they almost completed, they can get help from other people, just like getting an opinion from their own people, even though they have decided this by discussion. After that, if there's any final moment change or something like that, they can modify that or something like that. So that's a final moment, a verification or a validation or something like that. Then just the same thing, like they do a lot of these things or something like that, right? So remember this black t-shirt guy. We'll come back to him a little later. So they are one group one, probably this is group two or something like that. Another group is there, group three. They'll do this particular board once they finish or something. And another important thing is that they do simultaneously. The reason we keep them simultaneously is that they don't have time to take concept from this and claim that that's their particular thing, right? So they have to do simultaneously. So it's just like the task is pretty much the same, right? And finally, once they finish that, and they'll be explaining it to the other groups, I mean the class, the overall class, they'll be explaining their concept, what they are trying to project in this particular 2D floor plan or something like that, right? And at this point, discussion is not allowed. They don't have to, they should not discuss with their own team, as well as the other team members cannot ask questions at this point. So they'll be given a time to discuss what exactly is in mind. They have to completely exhaust whatever they have in their mind about this project. Then they should be completely left free, something like that. So there won't be any other discussion. Meanwhile, if they have any doubts, the other team members can note down in their notebook, and they can ask only during the question answer session somewhere. And another group, this is group three, and he also does that, and he explains this to the students. And then the real question answer session is very crucial part in cooperative teaching and learning. It is not only the contribution of the own team members, the contribution of the other members also plays a crucial role. So that's a real mimicking the real time scenario, right? If you work in a job, like your superior and your teammates are different. When a superior or the boss tells you something, you should be in a position to accept or understand and replicate that. So as simple as that. And if you are differing by what your superior says, and you have the clarity to correct him or tell him something like that. So those concepts are built in the cooperative teaching and learning, right? So once they do it, it's in the board, it's finalized, and no more changes is allowed at this point. Then there will be a question answer session in which your 2D floor layout can be questioned, or if there's any question or clarification, they can ask, or they can even say if something does not work, they can tell it's not gonna work. As simple as that. So it's not gonna be working, right? One thing we found out in the Gabriel's, this is actually Gabriel's drawing and thing. She's a foreigner, and this is our thing. You can see the cultural thing. This um, particular floor plan has got only 2 bedrooms in Indian 2D floor plan, whereas a girl from the other country, the Western country, she has got given a 3 bedroom, and she states that this is for the elderly people, and this is for the adults, and she says it's for the kids. Right. So normally we don't provide separate rooms for kids. Kids in the range of 6 years or 7 years. We just we share our own bedroom space, something like that. But then, like, the cultural difference you could see from a Westerner and from Indian perspective, something like that. And this is something that we noticed. She also learned that in India, people, the kids grown up, even kind of a middle-aged kids or given, pampered or something like that, will be taken care of by the parents in some way. So that's a basic difference you can achieve in this particular thing. And something that does not work. This is an arguable thing that they say. One of the diagrams have got external pathway. This particular person claims that for people who does not belongs to the family comes to the other way or something like that, and one objects that it's not going to be way it's going to be working and something like that. So this is some idea or something like that, and some secret, some place where they have to um, safeguard where they keep their money or something like that, and should not have windows or something like bigger openings, and all those things get argued during this particular thing or something. So, and finally, you can see this person who works in a world project, and how calm he just listens to the criticism, and there won't be any anger or no dismay or any frustration when somebody points it wrong. So this is a quality of a leader. And you can even talk about people, even how rough they are to you, and you should be very calm and polite and something like that. So those kind of qualities you can see among the students. And if there is any clash or something, if they go one crosses the line of the other, then you should intervene in, as a teacher, and you can. But fortunately, nothing sort of thing happened, and after this class they are all friends actually. They had a good discussion afterwards or something. And then this is what very recent thing. Earlier we used to do this board unconventional way of representing. Later people will have a computers like laptops. They sit together. This is actually a proposed hotel building. It is not yet built, so it's in our mind till now. So probably some of us will some of our students one day will become an entrepreneur or billionaires. They do it someday. So we divided into three. This is a pathway. If you want to have an interior lounge, exterior lounge, and then the food or a cafeteria kind of thing, so they can do it. So this is what we achieve right now. So we give a topic on hotel building, and then people sit together and they make up this particular thing, right? And then talks about lightings and something. Now people, the technology has enhanced our teaching as well as the learning, right? So now they use Autodesk Revit to do all this kind of interior lightings and something like that. And one student who's very much interested in the Western architecture, who always gives the suggestions to include this kind of things, were not in our country, maybe in bigger hotels or a five-star hotels. But they say it will be very good. It will be illuminating the entire space, and then you don't have to have a much lighting, something like that. So that's his, you know, uh, understanding, and also his, contribution to this project. And then why not a roof can be a curved? That's one. We thought of something like we do something different. Um, and we have the Sydney Opera House, and different buildings have got a curved shell roof, and we just thought of in enhancing in one of our project. It's not a real project, it's the project, right? So they can look into all those things and something like that. This is called realistic rendering. And so far we have not achieved any realistic rendering. We only could do some kind of an artificial thing, but this is a realistic rendering. This is done in V-Ray. It's another software only for rendering, just giving you exactly the look like a nature or something like that, exactly how it looks like, in real time. This is just a model, and this kind of concepts, people build when they really do the particular, collaborative learning and something like that. And this is the conventional face-to-face we did pre-COVID. So in a CAD, we'll be teaching this particular, the detailing, and everybody does that and applies in the building and see how it works and something like that. But this is pre-COVID, and after COVID, we felt initially we felt very difficult to communicate the exact thing what we do. But now, thanks to virtual, actually it's a virtual image, when which we teach with the virtual thing. Like now the students will not be there in the class. Instead, there will be virtual machines. They can do a collaborative stuff or something. So it's not opening, right? And then the examples, right? So far we talked about what is CTL, cooperative teaching and learning. Then we look into our implications and our experience in the CTL in our regular class. Then we look into some of the examples that you can make use of, for enhancing CTL in your classrooms or something. The first is the Kakuro, which is a Japanese puzzle. It's one of my favorite puzzles, and many people play. Many people solve Sudoku, then later stuffs like Killer Sudoku and something like that. And this is also the same, but it's a little different. And some of you would have seen this. And generally, this will people say that if you solve as much as Kakuro, your brain development will be very good, or your logical thinking will be way far than if you solve using other logical puzzles or something like that. So it's basically a crossword kind of puzzles, but with the numbers, right? And the numbers ranges from 1 to 9. I'll just show you. So this is the example of a Kakuro, when which we have got the rows and columns. So this particular cells, like where in which we fill our numbers, this could be 2 to 9. So that's what it mentioned, 2 to 9 cells in length. Same way, 2 to 9 in height wise, something like that. And then there will be two triangles. One is the you can see in this case there are two triangles, right? Upper triangle and lower triangle. In this case there's only one triangle, and you can see this only one triangle. So the upper triangle corresponds to the row. So this cell 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 should add up to 16, right? And so is that in this case this is a 10, right? So this is the lower triangle represents column. So these two cells add up to 10, right? So you remember, I think mathematicians will know partitions. Partitions are the number of way you represent a number. Like for example, if it is 4, you can represent it by 1 plus 3 or 2 plus 2 and something like that. Same way, you can use your skills, but particular skills to provide this to. So this could be 2 plus 8 also, or 7 plus 3 also, 6 plus 4 also, and 5 and 5 is not possible because numbers does not repeat in Kakuro, row wise as well as in column wise. 4 6 is possible, then even 1 9 is possible, and something like that, right? So this is a solution for that. This is actually 9 1. This decision will also influence the row of this particular decision, right? So this is 21. So if you put 1 and 9 here, this constraints get solved, but this will not get solved, right? And you cannot put 1 here because we have a 1 here. And if you don't provide 1 here, this 6 plus 1 7, everything. So it's all interrelated, right? So it's all interrelated, and it will you cannot finish this Kakuro or something like that. So this is an example of 8 by 8 Kakuros. And in fact, there are other types like 3 by 3, which is very easy, and 4 by 4, 5 by 5, and so on, 8 by 8. Sometimes irregular matrices, like for example, non-square stuff like 9, 11, 15, 30, and 30, 30, and so on is available. And I think there are like 50, 50, 100, 100 also available. That is what will be useful for collaborative learning, right? You need some 10 peoples to solve them. One can start from the northeast corner, one can do southwest corner, and then finally they converge it and something like that. So it will be a great thing. So if you are a mathematics teacher, you can you can print it in a vinyl board, and you can present it to the students, and they can solve, they try solving it, and they love it, right? Something. One of my friend, who's known as the inventor of magic square puzzle, who's Mr. T.N. Mahesh, and he told me that he teaches magic square to students, school students, and initially they feel it little difficult, but once they do practicing of magic square, they even, when they have a session in the forenoon, they even skip lunches to solve that magic square. So the amount of involvement and trust creates by this particular puzzles were very high, and finally it creates, it enhances the logical reasoning and other related stuff or something. So that's an example for mathematicians, and for even for people who are number theorists or enthusiasts, probably mathematics enthusiasts, or people look into recreational mathematics who use mathematics for fun. So they can probably make use of this for the collaborative teaching and learning. Mood board is a concept that I learned during my graphic design class. So in which that it's just a segmentation of different ideas put forth in a particular platform, so that it leads to a conclusion or a consensus or solution, whatever might be. So that's basically the mood board, right? And mood board has many advantages. It first one, it organizes the data, and next very important thing is that it will map the constraints. So something that works and something does not works and gets mapped easily and something like that, right? So this is an example of a mood board, and some people call that as an inspiration board also. People use it for creating some ideology or hypothesis gets mapped or something like that. Say in some movies you can probably see, especially in a thriller or a crime thriller, when which there will be a hero will be, or anybody in the movie have a mood board where they map different occurrences of the crime, and finally that leads to one person who does all the crime or something like that. So as simple as that, and mood board is as simple as that. And in fact architects and civil engineers does this nowadays. We do it digitally, they call it digital collages or something like that, but then the concept of mood board is the same, right? Even you do it physically or digitally, the organization of a data in the form of a matrix or in form of a form that can be easily retrievable or something like that, or you can put an interrelated stuff and interdependent stuff, and something which is not part of this particular solution, and you can even finally do some operation to select or particular entity you want from out of the mood board. So that's happened, right? So the thing that does not forms pretty much closest to that particular problem can be called as an outlier, but then that is a very important observation, that does not forms a solution to it, right? So in this case I wanted to share the incident happened in Alan Turing's life. So he was building the secret machine called Christopher to decrypt Enigma. Enigma is the German's code, signal transmitter to send war messages in German, encrypted war messages. So the Britishers want to decrypt that. So they put Alan Turing as in charge, and he does for many years, 2 years of time, he could not able to crack, and he say Enigma is very complex thing. But in a bar, there will be a lady who works in radio broadcasting, and just casually she says like, I know the other person, the Russian or somebody, the other side has a girlfriend, and the girlfriend's name will be typed 5 times every day or something like that. And then it gives a clue to Alan Turing that he really cracked the enigma, because the German codes gets repeated 5 times. That's the logic behind that, and he cracks, and finally Britishers wins the war over Germans. So it's a very significant thing, and during World War II, and sometimes that's a mood board, right? So you occasionally go to people and talk, and people contributed, and finally when you look into your design and you see your pattern is correct, and you provide solution to that. So that's as simple as that. And you can see the movie called The Imitation Game. So they have provided enough details about Alan Turing and his Christopher, which is the machine. And Turing machine, it is commonly known as Turing machine now, something like that. Right. And it's a wonderful story. You can take a look at it, but that has got a concept of mood boarding. He also does mood board there, when which he tries different combinations of password, or I mean encryption and also decryption, and does not work, and finally that particular scene he cracks that particular enigma, which is considered to be very very complex cryptography algorithm developed by Germans. Right. So what mood boards helps you that it establishes a strong foundation. Say what are you trying to achieve, that gets into a mood board, and ideology or hypothesis or vision of your problem you can visualize using the mood board. And finally it makes cooperative learning or collaborations. You can invite a lot of people into greater sense or something like that. Right. Then it is just also knowledge sharing and dissemination. Once you find out, after that Enigma was not used any part of the world, because they have cracked it. No, so as simple as that. And then it creates a positive group dynamics. In fact, if you have a positive students, like I've got a thrust to work on different projects, then if you tell them to manage their mood board or something like that, the moment they bring you with a lot of things that they have planned, it will be very interesting. And that's how the group dynamics gets built. If they don't have anything, what if they don't have an idea what they are looking for, then it will be very difficult for them to even do a research on what's not going to be achievable. As simple as that. This is a typical example of a mood board. It's an architectural mood board, when which I can zoom in so that I think the pictures are not very clear. It's a different buildings, photographs of different buildings. Remember, these are the photographs of ancient thing, right? Maybe before our digital cameras or something like that, right? And then I can zoom a little bit. You can see this is the Jacksons and Glores in 1964, and this is from Berlin 1927 to 28, and then the different places, different libraries, and they have got those things. So if you're a historian, or if you're looking for an information in the past about the building at present, then this mood board will really help you. Right? It not only help you, sometimes if somebody wants to do a project on typology of buildings, they can search books and something like that, but this mood board of somebody else will help them. Okay, so at this point they have got this particular thing or something, right? Something like that. Right? So I belongs to the late 80s. I born late 80s. That case, which means I have used both the film camera as well as the digital camera. So I have got the transition. But kids nowadays, they don't have any idea what's a film roll camera or so something like that. But that for them, like that'll be helpful if somebody like collectors of cameras will be of great help for them, like if they wanted to learn the ancient cameras or something like that, right? So those are all mood boards. Actually the concept is the same, but in a different sense. Collections, collectibles, souvenirs, in a different way they represent that. Then we'll talk about the hands-on experience. I think we have time of 5 minutes. Let's take a look at an hands-on experience. Since we started 15 minutes late, and then the exercise also got 15 minutes late. It's supposed to be on 3:45, but now we just gone through 4 o'clock. But anyway, just grab a sheet of paper, and we won't be looking into any solutions owing to time. What we're gonna do is we'll divide into groups, or that doesn't matter. So we'll have a single group of all the people, right? So have a grab a sheet of paper, and we're gonna do a task is that we're gonna make a play area, we're gonna create a layout of a play area with the different components in it. Like for a gated community, say 1,000 square feet area, a gated community with from age 1 years to 6 years, and use imagination to discuss, or probably will you can take a look at the individual things, a few important things or something like that, and then have an aesthetically appealing and economic design or something like that, right? So I'll give you, I have started my stopwatch. So 5 minutes time, probably all of you will able to provide something, then we'll discuss the outcome of this. Uh, Lini Darley, guest is requesting for an presentation. Do I allow? Organizers? One participant or the guest is requesting for a control. Should I allow? Hello?
Sir, you're audible, sir.
Yeah. One person is requesting for control.
No, sir. No, sir. We can go ahead, sir.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so perform this task. Just 5 minutes. Don't take more than 5 minutes. By 4:05 or 4:06, we'll wind up. Then we look into the probably the solution um, for this particular exercise, or we'll take exercise at the end. All right, so we'll wait for 2 minutes time. So let them start doing it. And one of the hint I want to tell you is that first decide number of components that probably in a park. You have the merry-go-round, you have the seesaw, you have the swing, then different things is possibly there in a park. So what I'm going to tell you is that you draw the actual component, which is the merry-go-round. You can see the merry-go-round here in known geometry, which is the circle. So the top view looks like a circle, so you can take that on a circle and you can label them as merry-go-round, something like that. So it does not take you much of your time. So create a floor layout with different components of the parks. Then we'll discuss like what are the things that we can expect you out of this cooperative. It'll be better if you have a discussion among yourself, probably. They have got a different things in their mind. So a culmination of different knowledges or sharing a dissemination of knowledges will help you a better plan or something like that. So this is just a basic thing. It's not an engineering thing or something. It's just a basic thing. It checks your logical reasoning, and also it checks your perception on shapes and probably urban, utilization of the spaces. Then aesthetics, the art you can do about symmetry, how symmetrically your diagram is, and how in terms of economics you can really talk about your arrangement of stuffs, people, something like that. So those things are like I've given few points to you. So final answer, if anybody finishes, you can unmute yourself and you can say that, or you can request for access. I'll show you. uh, I will enable your presentation, then we can discuss that or something like that, right? Collaborating with each other, each one will contribute to one component of it. One will be drawing the layouts, one will be doing calculating the number of components required based on the number of people, possible number of people's student kids available or something like that. So that's a basic collaborative or probably the cooperative thing that they do for this particular task. And since we are running out of time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the expectation out of this particular exercise, right? So the expectation is that, like, you can stop doing it and focus on this. Like it's not a solution, it's just like an expectation. Like did you draw the boundary of the park, or the boundary of the park is demarcated? Yeah, most of you would have done. Yeah. Then is the entrance access to the point is mentioned. So have you mentioned entry and exit to that particular park, right? If you have done, very good. Then does the park has fenestration or shrubs? Like it has got a small trees or shrubs or small plant. I mean, kind of intermediate to a tree. Fenestration is something like a Christmas tree. Do you have that in the parks? And did you mention about that? Then do the park has ventilation, cross ventilation? Did you talk about a park that is inside an apartment, right? So a gated community. Have you provided a good cross ventilation to the park? And does the park has sand fillings for protection or cushioning? Like the kids used to fall from the components, the seesaw and the merry-go-round. Do it has a good sand filling for protection, right? Uh, Sand filling can be given like a dotted points in the 2D floor plan. And is the park free from obstruction, like safety perspective? Like that's a very important thing for the parents' perspective as well as anybody's perspective. Uh, do you have a components that are very closer or something, or is the park has provisions for adults, like people who comes takes the kids, no? So the companions for the kids. Do you have like the grandparents? They accompany the kids, um, or the parents who comes with their kids. Do you have any? How do they do it? Like they'll stand or they'll be sitting in the particular desk or something. So those provisions are there. Did you mention that? And is a park capable of accommodating many kids with diverse range group at once? So that's very important. So if you don't have calculate that, then that will be very uh, wrong. So it will be a disaster during actual implementation, right? And then is the equipment in the park spaced so that it does not create collision? Like for example, in a slide, students or the kids used to slide down, and there won't be any obstruction at that point, no? So even there should be a lot of spacings um, in order to the slide down and then regain and stand. So all those things need some space, so there should not be any other equipment that's colliding each other. And first aid box or emergency exit available in the park. So this is a very important thing, access to medical in case a kid falls, and if his or her house or way far, then that's not going to be working. And it's a park free from driving units. There won't be any external movable objects or driving units, something like that. And is a park free from does the park has change rooms and covers or sheds? This is a very important thing. Change rooms for if they become dirty, they can have another cloths to change. And cover or shed in case of rain, does a park has? If not, I know that's not a good design. Then the park is free from domestic animals or pets and something like that. So is there any provision for pet, or you allow pets inside? And I mean, if you don't have any provision, then it will be encroaching inside. Then the park has access to restrooms or toilets, and if it is not there, then there are any provisions to accommodate that. So those are very important things that you should consider that. So this 14 points are not the exhaustive list. If you think about your park, and if you give it to a student group of students, they will provide a very beautiful solution, and you can even try that in your classroom. So something like that, right? And these are the things I wanted out of the exercise. And since we're running out of time, so we'll go back to the other stuff. Conclusion, right? So far we talked about CTL and its implication in a real-time perspective. Now it's time to say a few words about the inferences or something like that. Right? We talked about CTM, and I have used that for my construction management class. It's an engineering combined with management course. So you can even try that in your science classroom or any classrooms like you teach. That will be of great help. And in fact it always leaves a very positive effects on the minds of the students. I have tried other methodologies like flipped classroom, the project based learning and problem based learning and something like that, but this gives us more positive effects on the minds of the student. Remember, once I told you we passed for two photographs. This one which we told you, this the person was very aggressive in expression, but that's not also nothing wrong. It's just a form of expression, and how you receive also the matters the most. And the next picture we passed is this picture, and here it is. And you can see a few students are very involving, and some of them are like accompanying them or just helping them. And sometimes there are students like who have really less involvement. They are called non-cooperants, which means that they don't actually provide much enthusiasm into it. But believe it or not, if you observe and those people in this exercise gets repeated, maybe the next time when they see when other people enjoy in terms of knowledge sharing, these people also voluntarily comes in and they change their habit of change it, right? And that's how I felt like mathematics were considered to be a very boring subjects. The course I teach, operation research, in order to give a live example of real time example, so students started liking it because they actually started using their in their daily life, managing their inventory or something like that. So that's how instead of teaching them with the concept of inventory from an industry, so it's just like daily routine management and something like that. So they started liking it. So that's simple as that. And similarly, you give a the problem is also equivalently important. So the problem which you give is very good and competent enough, then they have the involvement. If it is very dull or just kind of okay project, then their response and involvement is also the same. So as simple as that. So that's what I want to tell you in the conclusion, right? So it leaves a positive effect, right? I have shown a picture that is done. I mean, the projects or the collaborative teaching and learning had happened in 2015, but it's still people remembers that even after graduation, they whenever they met us online by Facebook or something, they say, "Sir, we remember the class lectures. I mean, the CTL. They don't talk about CTL, but they say that's a project thing that we combinedly did in class. It was very entertaining." And some people also acknowledge that few students who go abroad, they have the same thing in their foreign universities also. So which means that they have some basic practice in our in their undergraduate itself, right? So those things are very important thing that out of CTR. And then as a faculty, it needs additional preparation time than the conventional thing, right? So I advise you not to do CTL all the classes or most of the classes. You just plan which class requires CTL. That class you focus, start preparing, well ahead, so that you don't, be in trouble during that particular previous to that day or something like that. And also very important as a teacher or a fellow teacher, I'll tell you, so you have to maintain your work life balance. Say, don't too much involved in creating scaffoldings for lectures or something like that. Take care of your life, because once you have a balance in both work and life, then you can excel in both, right? It's as simple as that. As a fellow teacher, this is a piece of advice from me. And another important thing about CTL is that CTL is very versatile and flexible. That you can always combine CTL with project-based learning. You give instead of an issue, you give a problem or a project, or you can even tell this is a research that you guys are researchers, a group of researchers report to me. This particular findings has to become to me or something like that. So those are also cooperative teaching and learning. Then flipped classrooms. Sometimes you don't give problem at that moment in the class. You give day before, so that they do background searching. Like some students you see have did a searching in the class, so that gets avoided. So they directly get into the involvement or something like that. And then collaborative learning and so on. So these are the some of the implications or significance of serial, right? Something like that, right? So the consequentialism, like this is what makes CTL better, or what are the things that stands out when you perform CTL than the conventional learning is that CTL always look into social engagement and social responsibility, which means that once you create a solution for a problem existing in a society, and if you actually use that or don't use that, it gives us a sense of accomplishment, right? I have done something with my knowledge, what I learned in college to the society. So that's a very, very awesome feel you get when you or your students will get when they have this CTL performed, or a particular societal thing gets enhances in that. And I have a PhD in civil engineering, and before that, when I was a college student or after graduating, I've used my civil engineering knowledge to create a temporary shelter for our security personals in our apartment. I'll just show you. So this is our apartment, the entrance of our apartment, and this is the only desk. In fact, even this desk were not available. Only these two chairs were available for these two security personals, and for them it will be very difficult because they have security personnel has to always look into the entrance premises. And you see, you can imagine how hot the weather in Chennai is, and if they were poised here with this desk and this chair, it will be very hot. So generally they were like initially here, they were moving, and finally they were here under this kind of shelter. Finally, I thought like I could able to give them a solution in order to enhance their surveillance as well as their safety or comfort or something. Then I've just designed this particular temporary shelter, right? So I have a design. Then meanwhile, the president of our association also asked me the budget I can quote for this particular design. And then the materials probably, in fact initially we talked about everything to be wood. Then finally all these things are steel, metal deckings. This is not wood at all, it's a metal decking. So wood will have longevity issues. So we have this. Then we talk about lighting. So this the other person, another person like the treasurer say that we spend money here, why can't we have a lighting, because that will be useful for night time for them. They can be inside and have this premises watched or something like that. And finally all these things like we have got interior fan, the table fan, I mean the wall mounted fan. Then they have a connection, internet, I mean not internet, electricity connection for charging their mobile phones or something, and some desks to you know have their belongings like the lunch bags or something like that. And some important phone numbers listed here, I mean intercom numbers of the security and the other related premises. And then they have the chairs, they can put it inside. And finally they can even you know um, provide, I mean have some other elements of their belongings, something like that. And then they can lock this door. This door was not there initially, and some people have suggested like it shouldn't be stagnant, so that it should be closed, and it should be secured also. And in my original design I have kept fixed support, which means that I don't have this kind of a movable thing. This is not movable, this is easily tractable. So initially I wanted to fix it. Then this area is the parking, general parking. So some people might create a problem in future. So some suggested, it's just like we all collaboratively did this particular thing. Right? So it all started with with my basic design. In how electricity comes into picture, light comes into picture, and then movable in case if there's any problem. So we thought moving this to here and away from this, but this up to this is the general parking, outside is parking, and after this we can move or something like that. And till now by God's grace we have not any complaint on about this, and everybody appreciated it. And in fact even after plenty of harsh weather, this still survives now. Even 2 weeks before I had a visit, and it's still good. It's not even damaged much, but has a light wear and tear, but it's still a good thing till now. So That's what we can give it to the society. The funding, they have collected it from the residents, and initially we asked a contractor about this, and he charged it around 18,000 to 19,000, but we built the entire thing in 8,700 rupees itself, like including the lights and other things or something like that. So that's thing. So they don't have to stay outside or hide under the park. I mean, under the parking during rainy days or something. So it's their own, so they can enjoy. And it when we comfort them, then they look into the duty in a great manner. So it's almost everybody gets benefit out of this 8,700 rupees something. All right, so that's an important thing about this. And thank you for listening. So we come to the end of this lecture.